All right, everybody. Wake up time. So, quick raise of hands to get some folks engaged. Who actually got to get on the Harry Potter Hogwarts Express last night? Oh, yeah. Good. Very good. Good? Lots of nodding heads? Yeah, I got there, and I think there was a 90-minute line, so turned around. So listen, thank you, everyone, for showing up today. I know it's Friday, and probably a lot of you are eager to get home, but we got a decent audience. We got all the sections filled, so very much appreciate you joining us today. So today's discussion, deciphering delegation, 9 things you must know as you're planning or rolling out Skype for Business in your environments. So about me, excuse me, my name is James Poulton. I actually live in Toronto, Canada. Like most Canadians, I like and play hockey, and in Canada we call it hockey. The rest of the world, they call it ice hockey.
True.
But, yeah, I think we're the only, maybe the US, I think they, it might go either way there. I work for Microsoft. I work in an organization called Customer Experience and Deployment, where it's a customer-facing role. I'm in the field quite a bit, dealing with some of our most largest and strategic customers. And kind of my role is ensuring success in those customers. And I take what it takes to make that successful, and I bring that to you folks. And so this is going to capture some of the learnings we've had in the field, and just some of the things that we've kind of learned over the years. I like Skype for Business, and I like Microsoft Teams. I'm sure some of you have heard about Microsoft Teams this week. Just to note, this is a Skype for Business focused session. We don't really have any information yet for delegation on Teams, other than the fact that there will be delegation in Teams. But that's about all I can share at this point.
Yep, so my name is Ståle Hansen, and I'm from Norway. And I'm going to break it to you guys that the polar bears, there is no polar bears in Oslo. Just so you guys know. I actually asked that quite a lot.
Now, there are polar bears in Canada.
Yeah, right? So the polar bears in Norway, they are way up north at Svalbard, where you may have known that we have that seed vault. That's where the polar bears are, just so you know. I founded Cloudway, so I'm an external speaker, and I'm a principal cloud architect. So I've been working with Cloudway for the past year, and I help customers use cloud services, migrate to the cloud, preferably Office 365, and succeed with everything in Office 365 and EMS and Windows 10. I actually happen to like Orlando quite a lot because I've been here on vacation for the past 5 years, every year. I have a 9-year-old son, and he and I, we love it here. It's good beaches, great fun, good food, so I'm really looking forward to next year as well. And I'm an Office Service and Services MVP. I've been working with Skype for Business for the past 10 years, and I like Skype for Business and Teams as well.
All right. So today's agenda, which also happens to be the 9 things, right, to consider when deciphering delegation. So we're going to cover what is delegation. I want to make sure that you understand what we're talking about, set the tone. We're going to be talking about online only, so this is Skype for Business online delegation. Some of the meeting scenarios that you run into, there's really 2 forms, right? You've got meeting scenarios and you've got calling scenarios. Those are the 2 primary use cases for delegation. Planning considerations. So there's a lot to actually think about when you're planning for delegation. It's not just roll it out and hope it works, right? So I want to make sure you understand what that means. Migration considerations. So whether you're doing a greenfield Skype deployment or you're migrating from on-prem to Office 365, some of these scenarios, what are the things that you need to be thinking about? Client considerations. So there's different client versions out there. There's different operating systems out there. How do those all work together? So we're going to cover that. How do you actually, so that's all the stuff you do before, and then actually we're going to get into configuring delegation, show you where you do it and how, and in what scenario and what licenses you need to do certain things. I'm going to spend some time at the end about troubleshooting, and I'm sure that's something maybe some of the folks in this room have needed to do from time to time with delegation. And then just some really overall best practices, right? What do you need, what are the basics that you need to know when you're going to be rolling this out?
Yeah, so at the end of the session, we will take questions, and you can use the microphones in the room.
All right. So what is delegation? Delegation is sometimes referred to as boss admin, the delegator, aka the boss, the delegate, aka the admin. And throughout this presentation, you may hear us interchanging these words because delegate or delegate, it kind of sounds too computerized or something. So typically when you're talking to customers, it's boss and admin, right? That's what we use. Delegation, as I mentioned, it can be used to set up meetings, and it can be used to place and receive phone calls. Some of the early feedback from the field, I'm going to be careful I don't fall off the stage here. Proper planning, this is very important. This is not something you just roll out and hope it works. Admins and executives, these are typically the folks that you're dealing with delegation, are the most important part, right? Or one of the most important critical people that you will deal with, and sometimes have the most vocal and loudest voices, right? And success to them, if delegation doesn't work, they think Skype doesn't work. There's a problem with Skype. But in actuality, it may not be a Skype issue at all. So that's why it's just so important to plan for this in advance. And delegation is one of those things that's just often overlooked. And as Stally and I were preparing for this, I even kind of thought, did we do a presentation on delegation? How exciting is that? But the more I thought about it, it's actually very important. And there's not a lot of information out there, really, on some of these things that we're going to talk about today. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps you guys plan. So we're going to go through the meeting scenarios and the calling scenarios. And Stally's going to take you through what that looks like.
Yes, I'm going to set the stage on, so we are on the same page regarding what we mean by meeting scenarios and calling scenarios, and how it's being set up and used. And we're going to look into how you can schedule a meeting both from Outlook and from Skype for Business, and to keep in mind for the admin what the experience is. The way you set up delegation, it's an end-user experience, and it needs to be done from the boss point of view. And what you need to do is go into Outlook, go into File, and go into account settings. And then you add the delegates there. You can add as many delegates as you want, and you can decide what they get access to as well. By default, it is your inbox and tasks and calendar. Sorry, just the calendar and tasks. And you can also give access to other folders in your Exchange account as well.
And when you're thinking about this from a Skype perspective, often this may already be set, right? So if you've got Outlook and you're on Office 365 and you're using that, chances are this has been set already, and you don't actually need to touch it. And in your mind, you might be like, oh, that's just going to inherit to Skype. I don't need to worry about it. But we're going to actually show you later on how you check to make sure that it's been set.
Yep. And from an admin point of view, it's quite easy to schedule a meeting on behalf of the boss. You need to go into calendar and make sure that you are in the boss's calendar and click Skype meeting. That way you schedule a meeting on behalf of the admin. And if you want to make sure that you have a PSTN number in that meeting, you need to have audio conferencing licensing, which previously was called PSTN conferencing licensing, on the boss's user, right? In that way, you will get the meeting invited as the boss, and you will get the PSTN dial-in number. From a Skype for Business point of view, if you want to schedule an ad hoc meeting, you can do Meet Now and get a choice of scheduling a meeting on behalf of the boss. And you will see that when you go to meeting entry settings, you will see that the meeting URL is not the admin's URL, it's the boss's URL. And for the boss, when joining the conference, he is the one opening the conference, especially if he's dialing in via PSTN. So he needs to use his PSTN dialing authentication in order to authenticate into the meeting.
And that's an important point, and some of the lessons from the field. I've seen customers who, the first time they're using Skype, they went from WebEx or from Intercall or something, that has a mindset of, you have this moderator pin, the concept, you know your bridge number, it's all automated and memorized. You go from Skype for Business, it's a little bit of a different experience. They need to understand that their PIN and moderator code is different than the boss's, and that it's not the same code that's shared between the two of them. I've actually seen that surprisingly a number of times where it goes back to training and making sure the admins understand the different ways of joining a meeting and making sure that they prepare their boss for those as well.
Yep. So for calling scenarios, there are different scenarios you need to take into account. You have inbound peer-to-peer and PSTN calls, outbound calls. You can forward calls, do SIM ring, call on behalf, and send to voicemail and reply with IM. And for that to work, you need to have the phone system license, both on the boss and admin, to be able to add as a delegate with SIM ring and so on in Skype for Business, which is the previous named Cloud PBX license. And also, in order to dial out, you need to have calling plans, which previously was called PSTN calling. The way you do this is also on the boss's side. You need to go on that Skype for Business user and client and go into forwarding settings, where you see you will have a delegation member set up. There you can choose what happens for each delegate, and you can also choose if the call is going to ring simultaneously or if there is going to be a delay on when calling your admin.
And if you don't see that edit my delegate member's URL, that means you don't have the license applied. It actually won't even show up.
So the experience when receiving a call from an admin point of view, you get to see that it is scheduled for your boss, and that you know that you can either transfer it to another device that the boss uses, for instance, a mobile phone, or you can answer with IM, or you can answer it yourself. But the most important part, it's not a call directed to you as a person, but to you as a function as the admin for the delegator. Also, when dialing out, you have the ability to dial out and reply to a call as yourself or as the boss. The scenario could be that you want to dial out, set up a call, make sure the call is going well, and that they have the understanding that they will talk to the correct people, and then you can transfer the call to the boss and they can have that conversation. And I also have a somewhat creative scenario here. Not something we have tested in the field, but just an idea I got regarding how you can do delegation, but differentiate between Skype to Skype calls and PSTN calls. Because you may have some bosses that uses Skype for Business heavily, and typically when you do a Skype to Skype call, that's a planned call, right? You chat first, and you agree that you want to do audio or video or desktop sharing. So why should the admin get that call? So if you want to differentiate on that, there is a way to do it. And you can do it by using call queues. Call queues becomes available as long as you have the phone system license. Then you will have that in your tenant. And what you need to do is set up a call queue, add both the boss and admin into the same call queue. And from the boss's side, instead of showing his own phone number when dialing out, you can use caller ID and show the call queue number when dialing out. So when people are dialing back, they will call the call queue and not the boss directly. That way you can use either simultaneous ring, or the secretary or the delegator can answer the call on behalf of the boss without it affecting Skype-to-Skype calls. So what do you think about that scenario?
Yeah, I think it's great. It just shows the flexibility of Skype for Business, and it's a really unique way of thinking about it. That there's a lot of creative ways you can do delegate based on what your customers need.
Yeah, so the caller ID you find under call forwarding settings in the Skype for Business client. You get pointed to a website where you can choose either your own number, anonymous, or a call queue number, which you are a member of.
So planning, this is again one of the more, it's something that's often overlooked because people expect it just to work, but there is some thought that needs to go into this, right? So who are the existing delegates in the organization today? Are there manager-delegate pairs set up? Stallie's going to take you through how to check for that. What about if you're going from an older phone system? Was there some type of other phone delegation that was set up outside of Office 365 or outside of Outlook and Exchange? So you need to understand that. And training and communications, right? So it's very important to put a communications plan together. As an example, if you're moving from Skype for Business on-prem and you're moving to online, or you're moving from different versions and you have to run the meeting migration service, and that migrates all of these meetings, and then you've got, maybe hundreds of meetings in someone's inbox in the morning, they need to know that that was going to happen in advance, right? So you need to be thinking about that as you're building your communications plan. And your training is super important here. Often when you do Skype for Business training for your end users, there's kind of like this, one-size-fits-all training. It's a cheat sheet, or it's a video, or it's a presentation you do. But you also need to focus on the admin element of delegation and making sure the admins in your organization understand not only what it's like to configure it from their side, but also how to configure it on the boss's side. Because often bosses, these are typically executives, people that may not even be at their desk, right? They're on planes, or they're in meetings, or they're on their mobile device. They don't have time to understand how to do this, right? They rely on their admins. So it's important that an admin knows how to do both elements of this.
Yeah, so in terms of migration considerations, the most important thing is before you migrate, you need to know who has this already set up. Either if you're migrating from a different system like Notes over to Office 365, or from an existing Exchange environment. So I did a Notes migration here this spring, and apparently, without them knowing it, they had some delegation set up as well, and that setting got migrated. Which meant that it became more apparent in Office 365 than what they had in their existing system. So an unexpected feature was that they've suddenly had delegates. From an administrator's point of view, it would be good to find out that in advance, or just after we migrated them, so we can either remove them or give them proper training. And we also need to think of the implications before the migration, and make sure that you migrate them on the same time. So don't migrate the boss first and then the admin after that, because that will break the delegation. They need to be on the same platform, on the same version, and hybrid will break delegation.
It's important that, like, if it's a different forest, delegation doesn't work between forests, right? So
yeah. In order to find out existing relationships, you can run an Exchange commandlet where you will see who has delegation set up and who it is. And this is something you can run before you migrate, and to make sure that you know who has this setting set up, and also go through with them if they're going to keep the delegation or adjust it. And maybe it should be thought about in a different way when moving to Office 365. More importantly, it's important to find both stale delegates and stale managers. And managers are boss in the Skype for Business point of view, and managers are what you call it in Exchange. This may break the migration. It may fail the migration to Office 365 if you have non-enabled mail users as either a delegate or a boss. Paul Cunningham is an MVP for Office Service and Services. He has created scripts for finding both stale delegates and stale managers. So you need to do this beforehand, before you move over to Office 365.
And this can cause corruption as well. So we've run into scenarios, and I'm going to go through it a little bit in the troubleshooting area, where if you've got a stale or stale delegate as an example, someone who's left the company, right? And the boss still has that person in their delegation list, and maybe they have a rule set up in Outlook that's forwarding messages to that delegate. That will actually break MAPI, and the delegation won't flow properly from Outlook into Skype for Business, as an example.
Yep. And also, if they haven't used delegates a lot before, or they haven't used Skype for Business before, but moving to Skype for Business Online, you should know that both the boss and admin will get an extra setting in their contact lists stating that they have a delegate and a delegator. So that also may be confusing if they weren't expecting it. So it's important to find this out before you move to Office 365. Clients.
Yeah, so client considerations, we touched on it a little bit, but the rule of thumb here with delegation is make sure the boss and the admin are on the same client version, both for Outlook and Skype for Business, right? So the boss and the admin are on the same Outlook version, boss and the admin are on the same Skype for Business version. It's just a best practice. We find it avoids a lot of potentially issues that may come up. If you're running click to run as an example, hopefully this won't be an issue for you. A couple other OS considerations are with the PC, and if you're running Windows, there's not much to consider there. Everything will work. But there's a scenario with the Mac client where there's this command called ucmappy.exe, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. We don't have that on the Mac. So the Exchange delegate sync doesn't work from Outlook on the Mac to Skype for Business on the Mac. So you actually have to, on the Mac client that is, so you have to set it in two separate places. So you have to go into Outlook and set it, and then you have to go into Skype for Business on the Mac client to set it. And they have to have the license to be able to do that. So just to call that out.
Yeah, so just to sum up configuration, it's a user-driven process. It is configured on the boss's side of things, which means that he may be or she may be unavailable, busy, not interested in you helping them. So plan that in advance. Also, there's two places you need to configure it, Outlook and Skype for Business. And the thing is, to make this work, you need both installed, right, on the same client. So delegation in Skype for Business is dependent on having Outlook installed, as we're going to show in the troubleshooting scenarios as well. So, and as I said, the request needs to come from the boss's side of things.
And we keep kind of going back to that, right? And I hope you kind of got the sense that there's actually a lot of moving parts here from the boss's perspective that the boss probably doesn't even realize he or she needs to do, right? This is mostly a client-driven exercise, right? There's not a lot of server controls, if any, that allow you to do this. So that's why training and communications and these types of things are super important as you're planning this. The next part of this presentation, I'm going to go over the troubleshooting techniques and things that you can use if you run into some problems with delegation. This is going to be specific to meetings, because actually that's where we see the most issues that can arise. Online only, as I mentioned at the beginning. Talk about how it should work, but what could go wrong, and how to diagnose. And it's going to get a little bit advanced when some of the diagnosing areas, but I'm also going to have some basic things that you can do as well. So before I get into this, how many people have seen this? Maybe raise show of hands. Good portion of the room, right? This is a very common error that happens in delegation. You do not have permission to schedule meetings on Skype meetings on behalf of the owner of this account. And this is the admin that's typically receiving this message when they're going into the boss's calendar and trying to set up a meeting. And let's say they just moved to Skype for Business, and the admin sees this as, Skype's not working. And typically, if this is an exec admin scenario, They may not even call the help desk. They may pick up the phone and call the CIO and say, hey, you just rolled out Skype, this isn't working. When in actuality, this may not even be a Skype problem. But the perception to the admin is it is, and it needs to get fixed, right? So I give you through a couple. What we've done is we've mapped this out into 6 steps that the Exchange Delegate Sync process. And what that is, what should happen is when the Skype for Business client launches for that delegate and the delegator, the permissions that are in Outlook should pass down to Skype for Business. So the ability to schedule meetings should just work. But in the situation where you get the error message I showed you before, I'm going to show you some of the steps to take to troubleshoot this. And there's 6 steps to go through to validate this. And if you look at this slide here, almost all of the actions are on the delegator, aka the boss's side. So you have to get access to that machine. And the client, almost all of the work is being done by the Skype for Business client here. So Outlook has a little bit of play in here, but it's mostly the client. So again, it's the boss and the client that you need to focus on. So the first thing that can go wrong here, the delegator goes into Outlook and adds the delegate, right? What can go wrong here? A couple things. Maybe the boss didn't know how to do it. They thought they were adding it. They didn't hit OK. Maybe they hit cancel. So to troubleshoot this situation, the first thing you do, right, when you get that error, let's just go into Outlook and make sure that the delegate's been added, right? So you should see it in there. You should see the person's name listed, and it should say that they're a delegate of that person's machine. If you see them in there and it's still not working, there's another step you can do. There's a tool called MFC Mappy. Who here in the audience is familiar with this tool? Okay, good. Good, a lot of you. This is great. So you can go into MFC Mappy and expand the IPM subtree, look at the calendar, look at the ACL table, and make sure you see the SIP URI of the admin in there. Now you may ask the question, what if you don't see it in there? What does that mean? So if you don't see it in there, that means right now, this is a Mappy Outlook Exchange issue. It hasn't even touched Skype for Business yet because these permissions haven't had the opportunity to reach the client. So focus your troubleshooting efforts on Skype for Business or on Outlook and Exchange.
Yeah, and that's why you need Outlook and Skype for Business on the same machine, because that integration happens through the Mappy interface.
Absolutely. So that was step 1. So let's say you go through, okay, no, I checked those things, the delegate's there, I see the URI, what do I check next? Let's make sure that the policy is not disabled on the server side. So there's 2 things that can happen here. There's actually the global policy, which I've actually seen customers, you've had an admin go in there and accidentally turn off, set this to false. That will prevent the Enable Exchange Delegate Sync option from running, and it won't work. Or what's more likely to happen is there's a custom user policy that's been created, and that user policy for the boss has been set to false. And again, that would prevent that from running. So check the boss's SIP URI, make sure that Enable Exchange Delegate Sync is set to true. You can also, if you've gone and done that and everything looked okay, but it's still not working, go and verify in the log. So there's a UCC API log file that you can use, Snooper, and there should be this subscribe message, and there should be a corresponding 200 OK that you see, and make sure the 2-line corresponds to the boss. And the reason you would do this is maybe you went and checked the policy, but maybe you entered it in the wrong SIP URI. So this is just a way to double check that, yep, you know what, I've gone in this log file. It's definitely not a policy issue. This option here, this troubleshooting step, this is going to be the most common, right? You're going to run into this one 90% of the time. UCMappy.exe is the process that runs and it's installed on the boss's machine. That process is actually what does this Mappy connectivity between Outlook and Skype for Business. And that's what pulls it down. So what can go wrong here? If you have the incorrect profile set up on the boss's machine, UCMappy won't work. You need to go back and verify that the delegator's Outlook configuration, I'm going to show you that in the next slide. There could be Mappy errors that you're seeing. So we need to analyze some log files, and I'm going to take you through that. So the first thing you do is you go in, make sure the boss doesn't have 2 Outlook profiles set up. In this picture here, they've got this person has 2 profiles. They've got their personal mail account, and they have their corporate one. And every time they launch Outlook, it prompts them for a profile to be used. But if you look at the bottom there, the default profile is actually set to Garth F. When UC-MAPI runs, it just looks at that default profile, which is the personal one, doesn't find the delegates, so it fails. It doesn't pass any information. So in this case, you'd have to go click the bottom button there, always use this profile, and select the actual corporate profile that it should be. The next thing you do, on the Skype for Business client, you can hold Control, hit right-click, and you should see that MAPI has connected, right? So you'll see this MAPI connected and OK. Note it can take up to 60 seconds for that to appear. You may see this connecting or MAPI in progress message. And you can force this by closing the Skype client and relaunching it. And that relaunches ucmapi.exe. So then, OK, what happens if it shows that it's in an error state? So that's when we know, OK, great, we have a problem here. We know where to focus. One of the things with this scenario, again, that requires the boss being in front of their machine to take that action, hold Control, right-click, and get that information for you. Sometimes that's actually very difficult to do. Boss isn't there, you can't get a hold of them, can't coordinate. So what you could do to validate as an admin, if this is a MAPI problem on the machine, is you can actually connect to their machine. You can connect remotely if you have administrator access through the network. And you can pull this log file. I'm not going to read it out because it's just too long. But you find that log file in the Skype tracing folder. And you can take that ETL file and you can open up a ticket Microsoft support and say, hey, I want to validate if there's a MAPI issue on this machine. And if you want to obviously sound like you know what you're talking about, mention the 3 fields at the bottom, tell them to search for those, and make sure that they're there. Because if they're not, that means that that MAPI connection is broken. The other log file you can look at just for completeness of information here, and this one may be easier, it's ucmapi.etl. Just have them search for MAPI has been successfully initialized. If you see that message, you're like, great, this isn't a MAPI issue, I'm going to move on. If you're getting that MAPI error, that's where you'll go back. Maybe ucmapi.exe is corrupted and you need to reinstall Office. You may have to just reinstall the MAPI profile, or there might be some of that stale delegate stuff that we mentioned before. So you go back and check those things. Well, let's say you've done all that, MAPI looks OK. What happens next in the process? So the delegator's client sends a SIP service message to the Skype for Business server. Server responds with a corresponding 200 OK. What can go wrong there? Well, what happens if the delegator is actually using the Skype for Business basic client? The basic client will override the delegate and actually strip it out. And a scenario here that we've seen this is if the boss has maybe 2 machines, they've got Skype for Business at home, and if for some reason they installed the basic client and they logged in that last night, that actually stripped the delegates out. To verify that again, you go into the UCC API log, search for the delegates SIP URI, and you got to make sure that you see that 200 OK response in there. So you've gone through that, OK, they're not using a basic client, that worked, I see my 200 OK, now what's happening? So now the server sends down a SIP notify message to the delegator, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute. And the newly added delegate should now appear in Skype for Business, and you'll see delegate. It'll be a group that appears, it'll be the name of the delegate. What can go wrong here? Not much. This should really work. You can, again, go into the same UCC API log, make sure that you see the admin SIP URI in there, and validate that it's the right one. Lastly, the server then sends a SIP notify message to the delegate's machine. This is the first time the delegate's machine has even entered into this equation, right? Everything's been on the boss side and the server side. The newly added delegator appears as a subscriber. I'll show you on the next screen. And again, what can go wrong here? Not much. But in these 2 scenarios I showed you, if something does go wrong, that's where maybe there's some type of packet inspector on the network or something is stripping out this communication from the server back to the client. That's probably where you'd want to focus if for whatever reason you're not seeing that 200 OK in the log file. So now I kind of jumped around a bit and there was some deeper stuff and some high-level stuff. But just as a best practices, if you leave today with anything, the most important points here, always ensure the delegate and the delegator are on the same version. That's number 1. If you see that MAPI unavailable thing when you're holding Control right-click, or if you examine those log files, recreate the MAPI profile. There could be some corruption there. Check for rules, make sure there aren't any stale rules with stale data, and check that default profile, right? So those are things you could even train an admin to do. Give them guidance, say, hey, look, go to your boss's machine, just check these things. Should hopefully get through a world of pain. You can run an office repair if you suspect ucmappy.exe is corrupted or it's not working for some reason. That's in step 3. I mentioned the rules. And schedule time with the delegator to train them, right? They need to understand. Don't make it sound like this is a complex process, but make them understand they control it, right? So they're responsible. The boss has a bunch of configuration that needs to be done, and that's typically the source of all the problems, and which is why sometimes this can be hard to troubleshoot, because you've got to get that boss in their seat in front of their machine to do a lot of the stuff I mentioned today.
Yeah, and especially if you are migrating from on-premises to online, make sure you migrate Exchange first. So you already have Exchange online. Then migrate Skype for Business, because then the meeting migration service will update the meeting URLs and make sure that both the boss and admin understands that they may get some confirmations on meetings that they already have invited to. So yeah, make sure they know that.
Yeah, goes back to training. It'll be the number one thing. And again, this is all this work you should do before you even move over to Skype for Business, right? You can make sure a lot of this stuff works before you migrate them or before you turn on voice for them. It's mainly voice is where, when they start scheduling meetings, where this becomes apparent if there's a problem. We've got some additional references on here that you can view if you want to download the slides afterwards. There's a good blog in there, some information about delegation, the prompts, and some of the MAPI errors. And with that, just wanted to say thanks. I know it's Friday, and it was a fun evening last night. I appreciate everyone showing up today and listening. Hope you found this helpful, and I hope it saves you some pain with your own internal deployments or with your customers.
Yep. And we can open the floor for some questions.
And hold on, before, I must preface, there are no questions about Teams. Yes?
Yeah, so...
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the majority of our bosses and admins are on Macs. What would you recommend for deployment in that situation?
Sorry, you said en masse?
On Macintosh.
Oh,
computers.
Macs.
Yeah.
Would the PowerShell script
It
still
will,
find a...
yeah, we'll still find existing
Yeah.
delegation access, because it's Office 365. And then, of course, you need to be aware of that you need to configure it both places.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway there, so the script will work, identify who they are, and just be aware that you'll have to I think the answer to your question is training the admin, to be honest, making sure that they're aware that they need to set it in the Mac and they need to set it in the Outlook client, and they need to check both places.
Did that answer your question? Did we understand it correct?
I think so.
Yeah, good.
The problem is with a lot of this stuff, honestly, is it's communication and training that gets you to your goals. There sometimes isn't a technical way to do it. Maybe the middle.
Well, I have a
Okay.
yeah. I have a scenario that the boss changed names, and the delegate keeps losing the delegation permissions. Have you seen that?
I've seen things similar. If they're losing permissions, it sounds like it's something related to that troubleshoot flow I went through. What I'd recommend in that case, I don't know if you've done it or if you've seen it, but it could be an older version of Office on there, or that ucmappy.exe. Maybe there's some stale data on there, and that XML file I mentioned still has the old name on it. Sometimes it's parsing that over. You could try reinstalling, going and replacing that folder. But what would be good, actually, in that case, go and examine those log files and see what name is being passed. And maybe there's a stale log file in there.
If I remove the profile and recreate the boss's profile, would that solve the issue?
You could definitely try. The profile is always a great place to start. But again, it sounds like you're at that step 3 where it's not passing the right name. So that could be mappy or could be corruption somewhere. Profile is always a good thing to start to do as
Right.
well.
Thanks.
Yeah, you talked about the MVP that did the find stale managers and stale delegates. You got the delete stale managers, delete stale delegates part of that? I mean, you got it 80% there. Let's finish it up.
Yeah, I don't know the MVP.
Yeah,
but
so
if we
you
could-
want them to delete them as well?
Sure.
Yeah, but it
I
will.
mean, you got me most of the way. Yeah.
Yeah, but that will show you who it is, and then you can.
Are you sure? Boom.
Yeah, right. So that could be a feature request for Paul. It's on GitHub. It's open source.
All right.
So yeah.
It's good,
Sounds good.
good feedback.
There is a SQL query to delete stale delegates. That's there on the internet. You can search
Yeah, but that's on premises, right?
for on-premise.
Yeah. No. So yeah.
Hi, it's kind of a question and also a comment. Is there any plan to move out of using UCMAPI to manage a delegate? We've seen a lot in our organization issues with delegates, and you're saying go to your delegator, to the boss, and set up some time. Do that on a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, there is no way. And we've run into some issue. Luckily, the admin happens when the boss was on vacation. We have major issue all the time with delegation. I've got some tickets and some requests open with you guys, which were denied with product group. And we've been able to get away with Cepha util to manage some of the delegation, but for an admin being able to do it on the back end when this level 1 or 2 support gets tickets to do delegation, but they have to go on the machine. And now we're moving to Mac. Not
Yeah.
good.
Actually, there is one other way to manage delegation, and that's using impersonation. But you do need to have full access to that mailbox.
Yeah, which require legal and
Yeah,
HR
right.
permission, especially I'm in Europe, and sometimes I manage US, the boss is in the US.
Yeah.
So is it something on the roadmap for you guys?
So I'll answer it like this. We know this is probably the most commonly requested item, and we're absolutely thinking about that as we develop going forward. So it's something that has been well heard at all levels on the Skype team. We're very aware that this is a pain point for customers, and we're working to make it
Hopefully
better.
they will do it for Team.
Sorry?
Hopefully we'll go forward with Team right away and not rely on that one.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
yeah. No, thanks for the feedback.
So the impersonation is what you said you're really looking at?
So what you can do today is impersonation, but that requires you actually having access to the boss's Exchange account. So
Certain scenarios that works. Certain scenarios there's legal ramifications or things, right, you got to consider. So depends on the organization. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We'll be here hanging around if you want to come up and have any other questions, or feedback's always very welcome as well. So appreciate everyone taking the time today. Enjoy the rest of Ignite.
Thanks all.